All set? Okay, here we go. Thanks for coming. From all over the world, people are watching us right now. Do you know that I get emails from everywhere? I had a gentleman by the name of Mohammed. So if you're watching me right now, Mohammed, this is Dr. Bob. What I want to share with you today is something I never talked about before. It's going to be testing, food allergy testing, blood spot testing, urine estrogen testing. But this was in the Wall Street Journal just yesterday. Women's Health and Wellness. And they were talking about the increase of autoimmune diseases, which we'll talk about. Breast cancer breakthroughs, which we're going to talk about today. So and I don't think a lot of people realize that anytime that something hits the Wall Street Journal, it has to be pretty big. It's a part of our whole economy, believe it or not. So what we're going to share about today, we're going to talk about some items that will make a huge difference with your life. So I have some notes here, but here's the 2 bullet points we're going to talk about. And just think about this. The blood fat test we're going to talk about first. Okay? I'm going to talk about the why we do the blood fat test. So if you go to the blood fat profile, and it's for the amino acids, the blood spot that says amino acids on it. Okay, do you all see that? Amino acids are proteins. When you digest food, undigested proteins can go through your system and be picked up by the blood that's around your intestines. And this is really important. So I have patients that will come in. One man's poison is another man's passion. One man's passion is another man's poison. In other words, Darlene might have an issue with mushrooms. She might have an issue with pineapple. You could have an issue with tomatoes. Here's the point I want to make to you. There's something called food sensitivities. When you eat something and immediately your throat tightens up, we're not talking about that. I'm talking about foods that your body has come to see as foreign invaders, but it doesn't cause an immediate reaction. It can give you a runny nose. But you know what it also can do? It can cause pain inside of your body. And pain is a part of food. So dairy can be a part of it. Peanut butter can be a part of it. But it's undigested proteins. So look at these right here. This is a blood spot test for different proteins and amino acids. But I want you to look at the food antibodies. So I'm not saying these are bad foods. These are very common irritants. So almonds. So I might suggest to some of you, eat almonds, a great source of calcium. But guess what? It can cause you to have a runny nose. Now listen to this. Many years ago, I did one of these tests on everybody in my family. And guess what we were all sensitive to? All the vitamins we were taking. And so you might say, well, Dr. Bob, did you stop taking the vitamins? No, you know what the real problem was? That was before flax oil. Now listen to this. We in our family all had leaky gut syndromes. What does that mean? That means all the food that we are digesting, which was not getting digested properly, was going through our intestines, being picked up, and there are protein particles. Our body saw them as foreign invaders. So a lot of people can have chronic allergies, stop eating a certain food, and then they start getting sensitive to another food. Well, I didn't know about flax oil. I just didn't know. So that's why I encourage all of you to take flax oil now, because flax oil takes away inflammation. That was really important, what I just shared with you. Now, some of you could have an issue with almonds. Now, there's a gentleman that has a book called The Ultimate Healing System. His name was Donald Lepore. And it's a really good book. It's called The Ultimate Healing System. And in his book, he talks about antidotes. So what does that mean, Dr. Bob? I'll give you an example. Some of you could have a sensitivity to wheat. Wheat is a very common sensitivity food today. And I think a lot of it is because we use so much genetically modified wheat products, which means it's a foreign invader to the body. But what Dr. Lepore found out is that people who are deficient and have a wheat sensitivity oftentimes need vitamin B6, and they also need oil. That's why it's better. Now, you're just going to love what I'm going to share with you right now. That's why it's important to put butter on bread. Because butter on bread neutralizes, and it's an antidote for the wheat. Margarine on bread does just the opposite. So being the ethnicity that I am, the great country of Italy and half Polish, I put olive oil on my bread. Why? Because olive oil is a good source of fat. Do you hear what I just said to you? So some of you, I always encourage people not to eat wheat because wheat has gluten in it, can deplete the body of zinc. So let's just say that you happen to have a passion for wheat. When you eat wheat, you always get a sniffle nose. I'm going to encourage you, throw some butter on it. Better yet, throw some olive oil on it because it's healthy. Are you understanding where I'm coming from with that? Now, I'm not going to go over every little item and tell you what the antidote is for everything, because that's not the purpose of the talk. The purpose of the talk is that there are foods. Your body can be allergic to some of the foods, could be sensitive to some of the foods. You can actually get pain in your body because of dairy products. Now, dairy, in which we'll talk about in the next blood test, can cause inflammation. Here's some of the more common ones. Now look at soybean. Now I'm going to stretch your mind a little bit. There's two on here that are really, really important. Do you know that you can have a chronic allergy problem because of the foods you're eating, and there's ingredients in the food that you don't even know that are there? In other words, texturized protein. When you see texturized protein, this doesn't tell you what it is. Most of the time it's soy products. So if you're eating a certain food and you don't feel good afterwards, you see the word texturized protein, if I had a bet on it, it's probably soy. Soy depletes the body of zinc. I just want you to be aware of that. Do you know another food that people have an issue with and don't even realize that they're eating it? It's corn. High fructose corn syrup. Corn syrup. Sweetener. So you could have an allergy. Now, when I say allergy, these undigested food particles go through your body. Now listen to this. It gets really fascinating. I think it's fascinating. Joints have a lot of blood. So that means there's usually going to be a lot of these particles around joints because there's a lot of blood around joints. Now listen to this little nugget. When you have pain that migrates through the body, one day it's your elbow, one day it's your knee, one day it's your hip, one day it's over here, and everybody thinks it's your little hypochondriac. The problem is you could have a food sensitivity. Now wait till I drop this little pearl on you. Guess what you're usually sensitive to? The food you have a passion for. Because when you eat this food and the undigested food particles go through the intestine, your brain sees them as a foreign invader, it attacks them, and guess what your brain releases? Endorphins. Guess what endorphins make you do? Feel good. So most of the feel good stuff not only makes you feel good, but it gets you fat. So when was the last time that green beans made you feel good? You got my point? You could give me some pastry, which is usually wheat. So that does not mean giving you permission to put butter on your torpedo of death, which is, as you know, a donut. So you see where milk is on there? Milk is protein. So all of these vegetables here have protein in them that can be an issue for some people. Does that all make sense? Because this was really important what I just shared. Because some people can have a whole lifetime of misery, and it's because of a food. But it's not always the food. So I'm going to repeat what I said. It could be a leaky gut syndrome. You might need to know the antidote. I'll give you an example. Sulfur is needed to break down fat. If you eat food and all of a sudden your throat has phlegm in it, like you're going to hocker, isn't that such a professional term, hocker? But it has a lot of phlegm in it, it could mean that you need sulfur. Because sulfur is the antidote for fat. If you had your tonsils out, you need sulfur. Broccoli, cabbage, and cauliflower are good sources of sulfur. That was important. So why do you think I talk about all these foods? You should all have broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower to eat on a regular basis. So this first nugget, we can do these tests to you. Now that does not mean I'm going to browbeat you and tell you to stay away from these foods. I'm going to first encourage you to take some flax oil and then guess what we're going to have you do. I want you to get a digestive enzyme. We usually use multizyme, Zypan, because you want to have good digestion.